So I'm here in La Jolla Shores, and this is actually the exact beach that I grew up going to. La Jolla Shores has a special place in my heart. So I thought I would come back here today and just kind of enjoy the beauty that this place has to offer and kind of talk about what happened with the camper and what led me to be here in this exact moment, because there's a lot of things that have happened that I didn't really talk about or explain very well in my previous videos. So I just want to talk about all of those things here, and I figured what better place to do it than La Jolla Shores. As I was rewatching some of my videos, I kind of noticed that there were some gaps in the timeline, and it kind of was a little jumpy. You know, when I was going through all of that, I wasn't really focused on creating content. I was just trying to capture what I could remember, and it was kind of a mess. So I wanted to talk about that today and kind of clear some of that up. So I've had a lot of new people that have joined my channel, so I thought I'd go ahead and do a quick recap on who I am and where I came from and what is going on and how I'm here. So I started this journey in February of 2021 when I sold my house in Kentucky and moved into a truck-and-truck camper with my 3 dogs. My dogs have been a big part of this journey, and unfortunately I am down to 2 dogs, but I have had my trusty companions with me every step of the way. My nomadic journey hit its first set of challenges for about 3 weeks, and when I broke a leaf spring on the truck and I was stranded in Idaho for 3 weeks. From there, I entered into a phase of making decisions that are the best that I can make at the time, and ultimately led me to everywhere that I have gone and where I am today. I lived in a 4Runner for 2.5 years, where I went back and forth between a platform and a rooftop tent, and after 2.5 years of that, I was pretty much ready to have a little bit more room. I knew that the truck camper was a little bit too big and the 4Runner was a little bit too small, so I wanted to find something that was a happy medium between the two, and I found the A-frame style camper. Now, that was a great idea in theory. Unfortunately, life had other plans, and it's been a big challenge as far as, you know, safety with the A-frame. The A-frame had its own set of challenges, such as the walls would collapse on me if it was super windy. I had a hard time keeping the walls up if it was windy, and it was hard to set up when it was windy. And I just started having some issues, but you know, it was home, and what home doesn't have issues? So I just kept trying to solve the problem and just move forward. I landed a job in Colorado where I was working as a camp host, and I had specifically gotten the campers that I could enter into that phase of employment because I've had a hard time finding a job in my previous industry, and so I needed something to do in the meantime that would still allow me the opportunity to live on the road. Unfortunately, when the camper was totaled, it changed my circumstances, and I ended up having to leave that company, and I am no longer employed by that campground. So I went back to San Diego, and I'm trying to regroup and figure out what's next. The campground that I worked at was located in the San Luis Valley of Colorado, which is a very beautiful valley, but it's also extremely treacherous with the weather. I started experiencing thunderstorms on a completely different scale, and I think that a majority of the issues were that there was just nowhere for the wind to go except to blow, and there was no way to stop. And the San Luis Valley is known for having high winds up to 100 miles an hour, and obviously that's why we have the beautiful Great Sand Dunes National Park, but it just doesn't work well with campers. So I learned real quick to beware, and that it was going to be a difficult season. And ultimately, the storm that ended up taking out my camper was a windstorm. There was no thunder, there was no rain, and I'm so thankful for that, because the way that my camper was totaled, had there been any rain associated with the storm, I would have been up a further deep creek. So it all worked out the way that it was supposed to, but it was definitely devastating. A severe wind gust came through and it ripped the roof off of my camper. Thankfully, the dogs and I had just stepped outside because my intention was to lower the camper. Unfortunately, the wind got a hold of the camper and just ripped the roof off. So when it first happened, I was kind of in shock. I just let go of the leashes and tried to grab the roof, because at the time it was sitting like this, where this is the top of the camper. Wind came from this direction and it went like this, and it was sitting for a while. It was sitting like this, and all three walls were still up. So I ran around and tried to grab that roof, but I'm just not quite tall enough. Every time I tried to push it up, the wind would push it further down, and I ended up having to just let it go because all of the other walls collapsed at that point with another wind gust, and then it was just a matter of time and it just fell on the ground. I remember when it first happened, I was just kind of standing there like, did my camper just really fall? And I was kind of frustrated and laughing at the same time because it almost didn't feel real. I even grabbed my camera at that time and just filmed a clip of just like, don't get an A-frame, and I was just like laughing. And I think the reality of the situation hadn't quite sunk in yet, and it didn't take long though, because I sat there and I was just like, my home just got destroyed. It took me a few minutes to process everything, and I called my dad, and unfortunately he didn't answer the phone right away. I think he was out fishing with some buddies, and I texted him and I just was like, it's an emergency. My camper just got totaled. I need you, kind of a thing. And he immediately called me, and he kind of talked me off the ledge, because I think once I heard my dad's voice, I kind of just released some of that. And I just allowed myself to accept the situation, I think. And I got really emotional talking to my dad. And it was in that moment that I really felt the sting of loneliness and how heavy it was. So after I talked to my dad, I kind of collected myself. I called insurance and I let them know what happened. I started the claim process. I let my employer know. And I just made sure that the dogs and I were comfortable, because we no longer had a safe place to go out of these elements. I did have to deal with putting tarps over the camper because it was exposed to the elements, but because it wasn't a rainstorm, it gave me the time to kind of work through all of that and start that next phase process. It took about a month for insurance to process the claim from the date that I filed to the date that I received my payout. It was about a month, and that month was very difficult for me. I tried to stay at the campground and continue working, and it was just really hard to do that with the dogs. Because of the exposure in the San Luis Valley, I had no shelter from the weather, from the rain, wind, thunder, hail, all of the things, and I started to really struggle. The dogs and I had a hard time staying cool, and it was just almost impossible to be comfortable. I did end up renting an RV for about a week, but that was super expensive, and the particular RV that I rented was not the best, and I didn't have a really good relationship with the owner, especially after I started having some issues with the camper, and it was more of a just go fix it yourself kind of a thing. And I just felt like with the amount of money that was being spent on this camper, that just wasn't a very good business strategy. So I went back and I lived in a canvas tent for a couple of weeks, and it was just a heat absorber. One of the biggest challenges that we were even having when I had the A-frame style camper was the fact that it was so hot. When it's 75 degrees in the San Luis Valley and the sun is shining, it actually feels like 95 degrees. And we were averaging anywhere between 80 and 95 degrees at that campground, and it was just brutally hot. My camper, I checked the thermostat, was clocking 115 degrees every single day in the heat of the day, and that was just not a good situation to be in. So I had actually been looking at purchasing a generator, and I noticed that because of the remoteness of the location, it was going to be anywhere between 1 and 3 weeks. So by the time I found a generator, my camper had been totaled. A couple of weeks after the camper was destroyed, my dad ended up driving out from Southern California to help me because I didn't have anywhere to put my things. Everything was sitting outside and just getting destroyed in the weather, and I was just really starting to lose my positive spirits, and I just needed a pick-me-up. So my dad drove out and he helped me significantly come out there and just take everything that I could not fit in the 4Runner anymore, and he took it back to storage in Southern California, because the whole plan was that once I did find another camper, I would just go back and get that stuff back from storage. But it really was so nice to see him, and I didn't do a lot of filming while he was there, but some of the things that we did knock out while he was there is I switched the electric jack to a manual jack. I got the IKEA Murphy table out of the camper, and I got my solar charge controller out. He helped me just get everything and put it into his vehicle, and then he took it back with him. The The whole hope was that when my dad was here, the insurance company would send the tow company to pick up the camper so I didn't have to be alone when that happened. Unfortunately, they were delayed as I was pretty remote in the location that I was staying, and it did not get picked up while my dad was there. So unfortunately, after my dad left, I started feeling lonely again, and I just did not feel like I was in the right place. I was having a hard time staying positive, and I was still working during all of this. And one of the biggest things that was frustrating me in this situation was that I didn't have anywhere for the dogs to go to stay cool. When I was working, the dogs had to go back into the 4Runner and I had to blast the AC, and it was just not ideal. You know, like in my previous setup when I lived in the 4Runner for 2.5 years, I didn't go places that were hot like that. I avoided those places, and I would go higher in the elevation and find the cooler temperatures. And I also had the 4Runner built for living in full time. This setup was not that same way, so we didn't have anywhere to hang out inside the 4Runner. I didn't have the rooftop tent anymore, and it was just not overall a bad situation for us to be in. At the end of the 3-ish weeks since the camper got totaled, I started getting heat sick. My dog started getting heat sick, where it was both ends, just headaches, uncomfortable, just could not get cool no matter what we did. And at that moment, I made the executive decision to submit my notice, and I found myself heading towards Denver, where I hoped to regroup at a friend's house and just get cool and just start feeling better. After I got to Denver, it took about a week for me to start feeling better from the heat sickness. I decided after a week of staying in Denver to go ahead and take the trek to Southern California. I was just battling on what to do. You know, I really needed to find another job. I needed to find another camper, but I was also in limbo because I hadn't received the payout from insurance yet, and I just needed to feel safe again. And I, for the first time, did not feel safe or secure or in a good position, and I just needed to find that comfort. Ironically enough, the day that I ended up leaving Denver, my AC stopped working, and it was triple digits and had been triple digits for a while, and it was going to be triple digits almost the entire way back to Southern California. So I was just frustrated and grumpy, and I was just low in spirits, and I just was like, why is this happening? And I had a lot of woe to me feelings that I needed to nip in the bud, because that is not the mindset that I want to be in. But I wanted to emphasize that, like, I struggle with these feelings just like anybody else, but my faith definitely helps me get through this, and I was struggling big time. And I drove all the way back to Southern California. I knew that on the drive home, everything kind of fell into place, that I was going where I needed to be in that moment. Those situations don't happen often in my life, but that was a very clear set. I knew I was doing what was right in that moment. And the drive home was so funny. I made a friend in traffic in Denver, or leaving Denver into the mountains. I made a friend and we ended up having dinner. And then when I got about an hour away from where my family lives, my friend Kelly from Denver, who drives a beautiful 100 series Lexus, and she was just honking and beeping, and I was just like, what are you doing here? And she was like, what are you doing here? And turns out we both grew up in Southern California, so she was visiting friends, and it was just kind of funny how it all worked out. It was just interesting that God would allow these situations to happen to lift my spirits up and just kind of prove that I was doing the right thing in that moment for my dogs and I. So that leads me to here, and I'm in Southern California right now. I did end up receiving the payout from insurance, so I am on the hunt for a new rig. Whatever that is, I don't know. So that leads me to what's next for my channel. So I don't really know what is next on my channel, but I do know that I'm not done. I feel that God has closed a lot of doors, but I also believe that He is opening up new opportunities for me. And I'm gonna bring you guys along with me as I navigate these uncharted waters. I do plan to get back on the road as soon as possible, but I'm not gonna just buy any rig again. I'm going to be pretty picky. At the end of the day, my goal is to not change rigs every couple of years. Like, I want to have some stability, and I want to have an action plan. I recognize that this is a journey. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. So as things progress and as the plan grows, I'm going to keep you guys updated and let you guys in on that and be just be forthcoming with the challenges that I am facing. But I do want to take a second and just say thank you to everybody who's been supportive through this process and has been following my channel. I know my channel has kind of gone from one rig to another, and it's here we are again. But you guys that have left positive comments and have been subscribing and just engaging with me and supporting my Patreon have definitely helped me keep going, because there has been times, specifically over the last month, where I've wanted to quit, I've wanted to give up, but because of your encouragement, I'm here and I'm gonna put one foot in front of the other, and I'm now more motivated than I was before. I would love to hear from you guys, so I will be doing my very first live stream here soon. I'm thinking probably my next video, and just kind of talk about what happened. If you guys have questions, or if you just want to chat with me in general, I want to give you guys that opportunity to talk with me one-on-one. So I'm gonna post the details of that live as soon as I have it all figured out, and we're gonna talk. But guys, that's gonna cover it for this video. Don't worry, more content to come, more updates to come, and as always, you guys will be a part of this process, and I'll keep you informed on what's to come. Until next time, guys, stay safe and have a very blessed day. I forgot how humid it gets here at the beach. My hair was straight when I first started this video, but now it's frizzy. It would be great to get into the water today, but I didn't bring my bathing suit. I just wanted to get down to the water and just take in the salty air and just be in a different environment and hopefully stimulate my mind a little bit and just praise God in this storm.